Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver. I am a performing songwriter and writer based in Los Angeles, and this is a passion project. I love books and I love music, and at the beginning of the COVID shutdown, one of the things that I found I was most missing was just talking with other songwriters. And my very first guest on that very first episode, it didn't have a name, it was just a spark of an idea. We just naturally, organically began discussing books. My guest that week was Ann Stott, and she loves Jane Austen, and I was sitting in front of my bookcase, and I started talking about Jeanette Winterson, and another songwriter who was watching the show, Harriet Reynolds from Austin, Texas, she chimed in to the chat box, as I hope you will, and she said, "Oh, Tomes and Tunes," and that is the origin story for this show. And as the world is starting to open up and shut down, it's one step forward, one step back, a little bit of a dance during these COVID times. This show has continued. We are in episode 62? 62! Episode 62. It's been happening weekly on Thursdays at this time, Pacific time, 2 p.m., and it has just been really delightful to talk with songwriters from all over. Like I said, this is a passion project of mine, not supported by anything except for you, hopefully, maybe, and ways that you can support the show if you're interested. First of all, like the Facebook page of my guests and of me, Arielle Silver, like our Instagram pages, our YouTube pages. Those are free ways that you can just help all of these independent songwriters just lift us up a little bit. It puts some wind in our sails, and bookers who are interested in potentially booking us for shows actually look at those numbers, and it's helpful. Another way, if you're interested in helping to offset some of the costs of the streaming platform, I use StreamYard for this, and of course there's the internet and all the other things, the cameras. If you're interested in helping to offset the cost of that, tips are always welcome. There's a support link at that little banner that's going across the screen. And also, I have a newly launched Patreon. Every month I am releasing new songs and backstories about the songs. So if you'd like to become a patron, that also helps to support Tomes and Tunes. And I would very much welcome you joining me in my little shed of songs and stories and wonders, which is exactly where I'm sitting right here, my little shed in the backyard. I am going to bring my guest in right now, Aireene Espiritu. Oh my gosh, I didn't even ask her which syllable her last name should be accented on. She's going to have to correct me on that one. She is born in the Philippines and lives now in Northern California. I am in Southern California. So we are just going to have a conversation across Highway 1. Here we go. Hi.
Hello.
I forgot to ask you I feel like when I say your last name, I'm emphasizing the wrong syllable. So Aireene help me here.
Espiritu. Like asparagus. But don't say asparagus.
I love asparagus. I really love asparagus. Espiritu, but now that's helpful actually. Asparagus, Espiritu, but a spirit. When we were talking before the show and kind of the, whatever you call it, the pre-game, I don't know. We were talking about your first name, and I asked you where the spelling of Aireene came from, because it's so similar to my name, and it's just really interesting, and I like to kind of hear where did our parents come up with these names? Like why did they do this to us? Because of course you and I have this shared experience of, as we were children, of course, like we wanted to maybe have a more normal looking name, normal based on wherever we were living at the time, right? And you said that your mom liked this particular spelling of Aireene because it was just creative and interesting. And I feel like, just trying to adjust my camera there. There we go. I feel like that idea of a name being chosen because it's creative and interesting just infuses something perhaps into the child's upbringing. Like
I
there,
think so.
there's something about that because you are creative and you are very interesting too. So
Well,
it
likewise.
worked.
I think it was the IE in our names that kind of brought us here today.
I know, I know.
But it's true because you grew up feeling like, why does my name stand out or not stand out? Why is my name different from the different names that everybody else has, and why do you have to be, why is it different?
Yeah.
So you grew up thinking that you're different, and sometimes it doesn't feel good as a child when you're trying
No.
to fit in. And it's not till later that you realize, oh yeah, okay, that's really not, it's really a cool name actually,
Yeah. It
but
is
as
a
a
cool
kid it's
name.
kind of traumatic.
Well, it's funny as children, kids don't want to be different in any way that they don't have control over, but they do want to be different in, like, they want to choose their way to kind of put their stake in the ground. Like, kids kind of at different things at different ages, but they'll put their stake in the ground and say, I like this kind of weird music, or I wear this kind of weird clothing, or something that's a little different than what they envision as mainstream, in their peer group at the time. But things like names or ethnicity or, cultural background, like those things that mark us as different that we have no control over as a child, they feel deeply uncomfortable, right?
Yes, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I also felt like, I think in the Philippine culture, people like to give nicknames, like endearing nicknames. Yeah, I was telling you earlier, like
Yeah.
Weng Weng and Don, Nick Nick, or they like to repeat kind of like a,
Yeah, it's
I don't know,
playful, like that repetition thing. It's
Right.
rhythmic too. It's like,
Yes, but I didn't have that. I just had Irene. So I thought, I
oh,
always kind of pouted about how come I don't have a nickname like
oh.
everybody else. But of course, I mean, I'm pretty happy with my name now. But as you said, it's not a name that we chose. It was
Yeah.
something that was given. But I kind of like how Arielle and Irene kind of runs
I love
together.
it. We should play a show together, really,
Let's
just
do
so that
it.
we can see our names on that bill, like like that poster. I think that there could be, because
I
also
love
our
it.
last names too, even though they're very different. It's like
Yes.
we really overused the E's. Like between the two of us, we have used all the E's on the Scrabble in the
That's
Scrabble
right.
box, right? Like,
And your
um,
last name is Silver with the S, so
yeah, and the S and the I, and your T and my L. There's something like very.
the visual I think is interesting. That would be a cool poster to put
Forget it.
together.
We're not just playing a show together. We are going on tour.
That's right. We're
People
gonna have
have hooked
posters.
up for worse reasons than this, so I think this is kind of brilliant.
I love it. Let's do it.
So you moved to the States when you were 10, and actually I want to go back to what you were just saying about that nickname. That's interesting that you didn't have a nickname. That your name was always Irene, whereas everybody else got these cute nicknames. Irene, Irene. What could have been your nickname? What do you think would be? Because you mentioned some of your relatives' names, and they're very flower. They're very romantic, multisyllabic. You know, they kind of call for, like, I forget some of the names that you said. I remember the Geronimo
Geronimo. My mom's name is Valencerina.
Valensarina. And so, what was her nickname?
V.
Of course.
V. And my cousin's name is
Valencerina.
Rebecca, and we call her Bex.
Bex.
My
Okay.
nephew is Dominic. We call him Nick Nick.
I try to mute myself, by the way, when I live right under the Burbank Air Path. But you might be able to hear the plane over here.
Yes, I hear
I didn't
it.
know if this was going to be a real roaring one, so I was kind of getting prepared. But if you see that little thing go on like that, that's what it's for. Irene, Irene. What kind of nickname? I mean, did your friends never have a nickname for you? Is there one
In
in
high
your
school.
mind? Okay,
Yes, in high school, my friends started calling me Reenie.
Rini.
Rini, and then my roommate in San Francisco called me Queenie. I don't know where Queenie came from, but Rini makes sense.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
wasn't
I
until
think
I
that
was an
people,
adult.
once you kind of open up, you start shortening something, it can like travel. Like,
What
a
about
lot,
you?
my family calls me Ari.
Oh, I like Ari.
Except one of my great grandmothers, she was married to, her husband's name was Harry, and so instead of calling me Ari, she called me Ari. So, but most everybody else it was Ari. So when I met my sweetheart's kids for the first time, so this was a long time ago. We've been together for a long time now. They were age 5 and 8, and I introduced myself to them. I said, "You can call me Ari if you want to."
Mm-hmm.
And so they called me Ari for a couple of days, and then they were in the back seat. We were driving to a local, it was Descanso Gardens here in Los Angeles, which is very beautiful gardens, flowers, trees, gorgeous place. Um, and they were in the back seat. We were on our way to Descanso, and they just started playing back and forth. And I was in the front seat just listening. And they were like, Ari, 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 Arte, 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 Ari, Arte. Arte likes to partay, blah, blah, blah. It went on and on. But the Arte stuck. And
Huh.
at some point in time, the older one switched back. Now she calls me Arielle because she's sophisticated and older. But the younger one, who is also older, but not maybe she's a little warm and fuzzy little ball of love, she still calls me Arte. So,
That's pretty cool.
so that's my nickname with them. Yeah.
I love
So
it.
names are funny things. So you moved to the U.S. when you were 10. You moved to Jersey, then you moved to Yonkers, New York, and then when you were entering high school, you said, "Hey, Mom, I want to go to California and move in with my aunt and peace out." Oh,
That's right.
that's like like that's huge. That's huge that you do you find, I mean, do you make sense of that now as an adult somehow? Like, what is it about you as a person, as a young child, would just say, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm moving across the country. I'm moving to a totally different state, far away. And did you want to create, you needed space? What was it?
It was a really tough time. I was 14, I guess, about to graduate middle school. And I was, like I mentioned earlier, our emotions are, we're
Oh my
teenagers,
gosh.
we're very emotional. And my mom worked 3 jobs, and I felt so bad that she had to
Mhm.
support my brother and I for the most part. And I think the moment I realized, there were 2 moments I realized I needed to move to California. First I knew when I visited my aunt, she told me about the really good public school in Milpitas.
Yeah.
So I knew that in the back of my head. And it was winter time when
Oh, forget it. That just there you go.
does that answer?
That winter time, winter in New York versus winter in California.
Yeah, so I was coming home, trying to take the bus home. I went to school, I was late, and there was some kind of extracurricular activity. I was waiting for the bus to come home, and those LCD, that are above banks that tell you what time it is. It also told you the temperature. And I remember waiting for the bus, and the bus hadn't arrived. It was been an hour, freezing ass cold, and it said minus 10 degrees.
Yeah. You're like, peace out.
9:30 and then 10:30. And I just remember thinking, I'm not very good. I get
Wow.
cold easily.
Yeah.
And it's like, this sucks, So
Yeah.
cold, number one. And number two, I think it was when my mom came home after work, and she had, like dark eye bags. And I said, "Oh, your mascara smeared or something like that." And she's like, "Oh, I'm not wearing mascara." And it just dawned on me, it's because she's been working so hard and she hadn't
Oh.
slept. She worked from 8 or 9 a.m. till 5, and then she would drive to the next job. till midnight, you know,
Wow.
and then weekends she would drop us off at my grandparents in Manhattan. So we would spend the weekends with my grandparents, which was, you know, another great memories, which I treasure, being able to
Yeah.
do that. But so I just, you know, part of me, it's like, if I remembered my auntie telling me about the public school that was really good in Milpitas, and it was, you know, free public school. So I told my mom, I want to go to California. It felt like it was the right thing to do. It
Yeah.
felt like there was no other option, you know. So she said, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Yep." And she says, "Okay." So we did one last family trip to Niagara Falls. And then
Oh,
after
wow.
that, she put me on a plane, and there I was, in California, at
And
14.
and was it the right thing to do? Did you feel?
I think so, yeah. Um, you know, it was very challenging, obviously, but I felt like I grew up fast
Yeah.
because I felt also indebted to my auntie and her husband and 2 kids. She had a newborn and a toddler, and so I learned, you know, take care of them and, of course, try to contribute. You know, I made rice. That was my duty, is to make rice for dinner, and I babysat and I, you know,
Yeah.
vacuumed, and I had my own phone lines, so I had to pay my phone bill, and so it was just an interesting time.
Wow.
So, but I'm very grateful to, you know, to my aunt, for and her family, obviously, for letting me
Yeah.
stay with her for high school.
Yeah. And then you you were mentioning earlier today that when you moved to California, you sort of found this crew of friends that were you didn't think about it at the time, but as it turns out, they were Filipino.
They were all
Um,
Filipino, I think, except for one who's Mexican. But you know, in high school, we were just friends. We had a great time. We were being teenagers,
yeah.
and we're still friends today. In fact, two of my high school friends who are now married, we're going to Half Dome in October, and so
Wow.
we're still in touch, you know, and we're still dear friends,
That's
and
amazing.
which I really really treasure. You know, those longtime friends are the ones that know you through these
Hmm.
years, and you know, it's the kind of place where you can just go to their house and just open the refrigerator and you just feel like home. You know what I mean?
Oh. Now,
It's a great feeling.
why do you think that you all you said that at the time you didn't really realize that most of them were Filipino, but now in retrospect you're like, "Oh yeah, that just sort of happened." So it seems like there was some gravity, like some attraction that it was subconscious, but you were seeking out that familiarity, or maybe is it that you were seeking out people who were not going to see you as different the way that they did. I can't remember if you were talking about Yonkers or the New Jersey
Dumont.
piece. Dumont, right? Because that really resonated with me when I moved from New Jersey, where I'm not from originally, but had lived there for some years. And when I moved back to Florida, there was that very uncomfortable moment of having had a group of friends. It was sort of the opposite of you. I was in a community that was, I didn't think about it, but it was a lot of American Jewish kids, a lot of Italian kids, a lot of like we felt similar, I guess, in some ways. And when I moved to Florida, it was not those communities at all. I was
Mm.
very much the outcast, whereas you kind of did the opposite, where you were sort of um, feeling like an outsider, and then you found this group where you didn't feel like an outsider. What?
Exactly. Good question and good perspective, because, you know, I just sometimes I don't think about these things, but you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. You know, when I lived in Dumont, New Jersey, there were only a few Asian families there. So I felt left out. In Yonkers, New York, at the time, of course it's not the same now. There were a lot of diversity, but not so much maybe Asian diversity. There's a
right.
lot of people from, you know, Puerto Rico, Ecuador, and
Yeah.
um, but not as much Filipino. And then moving to California, there were so many Asian Americans where and I think at the time Milpitas High was the most diverse high school, and so it felt like home being with fellow Filipinos. And of course, when we'd go to each other's houses, there's the
Oh,
food and there's
yeah.
the culture, and we like to joke around and laugh, and not that that's just a Filipino-centric thing, but
Yeah,
it's
but
just
you
this
could like,
commonality, this
yeah.
subconscious, like you said, not knowing that you don't have to explain to someone. The inside jokes, were
Yeah.
there, so there is something to that.
I've been listening on audiobook this week to Rhiannon Giddens' book. It's called Bridge is in the title. I can't remember it offhand. I feel very stupid for not being able to say the title right now. But in
No,
any case,
that happens all the time.
she narrates it, and it's kind of woven with her music, and she's a remarkable musician, a remarkable banjo player, and she's biracial, grew up in the South. I think her dad is white and her mom is black. I think that whatever. One parent is one parent is the other, and so she grew up in this world. She's light skinned, and she talks in the book about how tiring it is to constantly get this question, which is sometimes phrased in a rude way and sometimes phrased in a trying to be not rude way, but either way it comes down to the same question, where people look at her and are saying like, where are you from? And she's like, I'm from North Carolina. And they say, no, well, where are your parents from? Well, they're from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows what they're asking. They're wanting to know about race. They're wanting to know about culture. They perceive her as not being American or something like that. And really related to this moment in the book, because I've gotten this so many times in my life, where people look at me and they say, where are you from? And I say, Florida. And that's not a satisfactory answer. That's not what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
This way of being seen as some kind of other that is somehow not being judged as bad or good, but just not, having sort of a fixed understanding of what it means to be an American, what it means to be in this culture, and having that be a very narrow definition.
Right.
And yet I belong in that wider definition. You belong in that wider definition. Rhiannon Giddens belongs, in that definition of like, oh, it's a multicultural place.
Yes.
Do you relate to that? Have you
Oh,
ever had that question?
all the time.
Yeah.
um, and I think, and I think you also described it pretty well in that, when somebody asks you that question, I think whether you mean it in a bad way or in a good way, I think our brain is like trying to categorize us naturally as what humans do,
Mm.
and but because we get categorized all the time,
Mm.
all our lives,
It's
we kind
tiring.
of like, come on,
Yeah.
so it is tiring, and there are some stereotypes as you categorize and
Right.
as you judge, and there's also the gender factor, and there's also
Yeah.
the physical factor, and so it is
There's this
tiring.
word, I just want to interject right here, because there's this word that I stumbled upon years ago, but it feels pertinent to this. Exotification. When you're a woman and you're being perceived as somehow another, and the person asking you is like, you just feel like there's a exotification, something happening there, which is tied up in all of that gender, culture, race, whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And even, as an Asian American traveling, it's all over. It's not just here in the United States. Um, and this really upsets me every time this happens. But when somebody says to me, "Oh, do you have a Filipina sister or someone I can date?" And I said, and it's the whole, it's so upsetting to me. Why does it have to be a Filipina? Or even traveling. I was going to Japan one time, and there were these two guys waiting in line to board the plane, and they were saying, "Oh, I just coming from the Philippines, and you got to marry a Filipina. They're the best types of spouses," and it just so infuriated. And actually, there was a book that I found when I was in Thailand. I was in a bookstore, and there was an actual book on how to find your Filipino wife, written by an Australian man. And I was just, is this real? Wow! And it's actually published, and it's in a bookstore. I'm laughing,
For
but
those
it's
who
not
for
funny.
those who need an instruction manual, there you have it. It's in the bookstore. You can find it. There's probably an app for that too.
But there's
Oh,
another
wow,
side of
yeah.
that argument too.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to understand, but I don't know how to understand it. In that, Philippines is a third world country, and this is an opportunity for them to live a better life. So is that, if they're living a better life, is that a good thing? I don't know.
Right, there's an exchange somehow, and does it always have to be an exchange of authentic love, or is it legitimate to have this other whatever this other exchange is,
Right.
this trophy wife for the opportunity to come to the United States and the opportunities that are here? It's a complicated question. I hear
It's
what you're
very
saying.
complicated.
Yeah.
Once my cousin, who's a very good at discussions and arguing and, constructive,
Yeah.
he was the one that posed this question to me. He said, but on the other hand, she's living a better life, and she's taking care of him, so he's getting something out of it, and she's getting a better life. Is that a bad thing?
And it's consensual.
It's as long as
As
I
long as
guess
it's
that's
adults, it's
I
right.
guess as long as it is consensual, and everyone feels
Right.
mutually content.
Right.
So
Right.
who am I to judge that, right?
Yeah, and is it a position of unchecked privilege to assume that, you know, for us to put some kind of judgment on that, some kind of negative judgment on that? You know,
Right.
if it works for the parties involved, if it betters both people's lives in a way that is meaningful to them, then isn't that enough? Doesn't that suffice?
Yeah. Wow, I didn't
Wow.
realize we were going to get to this.
This happens on this show. I don't know what it is. It
You're
just
very
does.
good at digging stuff. Digging stuff.
So, today I found myself thinking about just a little bit of a jump. I found myself thinking today about music and how the creative life is, um, it's a life of freedom on some mental level. There's some kind of freedom, even even if it's not even for people who have a day job, who are tied and tethered and strapped to other things, just being creative, having that space in your mind to imagine a song or a dance or a story or a piece of artwork, and then to be able to pull it out of the mind and create it in the, like, manifest it in the world. So today I found myself thinking about my own uh my own lifelong insistence of music, of playing music, of singing. I never thought of it until today as an insistence, but looking back on my life, I see that I have insisted on it. It has been an uncompromising position that I've taken, non-negotiable. I am going to make music, and that has shown up in my life in different ways at different times in my life. Different kinds of music make up my musical DNA and all of that stuff, but Do you feel that way with this idea of freedom? How did you come to music? Where did that start for you?
Um, by the way, right on. I totally feel that, and I think it's good to declare it out there for those who might be wondering.
Hmm.
Um, but time and time again, it's been proven that you know, it's a part of who we are that we can't deny, and maybe it needs a break once in a while.
Mm.
But I grew up with my uncles playing guitar, so I've always been surrounded by, music playing and
Yeah.
guitar playing, and I never thought I would do it full time until it happened. Not by choice, it just happened.
Whoops.
Exactly.
I don't know where'd that come from. I
You
lost
just
my
kind of
keys. I became a musician. I don't know.
I like to look at it as we're on the freeway, and sometimes we veer off. Sometimes we get sleepy and we just kind of like veer off to the side, or we decide to take an exit. But somehow we make it back to the freeway. And no matter however we exit or how many times we exit, we always end up back on the freeway.
Yeah.
Um,
And that
but
freeway for you is music? Is that what
the
you're
freeway
saying?
for me is music, and some also mainly music.
That's funny that you have lived in California for so long and you're describing things in terms of freeways. I just like like we are known for our traffic. Anybody who's watching who's not from California, I just want to point that out.
I should add you. My friend Michael McNevin and I, who's another great songwriter. Do you know Michael McNevin?
I feel like we have bumped into each other, but I should probably have him on the show, right?
You should,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's a great songwriter, absolutely fun guy to talk to. We're always up and down Highway 5, and we always miss each other, so we actually created a Facebook group called Highway 5 Club.
No.
And so I'll invite you. So we just kind of
Amazing.
but we have to you become a president when you take a picture of a Highway 5 sign, then you're the president for that time until somebody else posts a picture of the Highway 5 sign.
And then the crown. Okay.
Yeah, so it's hilarious. We just kind of, so the Highway 5 Club. Um, but I just want to share, sorry if I interrupted you. Um, Time and time again, whenever I have doubted, what the hell am I doing? Signs always come that tell me that I'm on the right path. Like how am I gonna, where am I gonna stay? What am I gonna do now? And something always pulls through. And so it's happened enough times that I know that, okay, this is where I still worry, of course, but I know enough that I'm on the right track, that I've been on the right track. So I'm grateful for those signs. Does that
You're
happen
giving
to
me
you?
chills. You're giving me chills right now because I feel like you just defined faith. That that idea that you your faith today comes from the knowledge that in the past this has happened, and so you have the faith then in the future that it will continue to happen. That somehow those signs will appear. That net will appear. Whatever it is.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. I believe.
Yeah. So, did you never step away from it once you were? I took a 10-year break. I left music for 10 years. It might have been more than that, but I just say 10 years because who needs to count details? A large swath of time. I didn't leave it. I mean, I had to shut my heart to it. I felt like a lover who had been rejected too many times, or it had just been too hard. Like the relationship between me and music had just been too hard, and I couldn't take it anymore, and so I had to leave. And I don't know that just like those relationships, when you break up, you're still thinking about it and trying to work out the tangles and trying to understand it for maybe years afterwards. That was still going on for me regarding music, so I can't say that I really left it in that way. But did you ever have a time like that of your life?
Oh yes, yes. A long time ago, it was a heartbreak that did it. Basically, I just didn't feel like writing. I was brokenhearted, and I think it was also 10 years for me. I just
Wow.
kind of course it's always there, like you said. It never really leaves. It's always
Yeah.
kind of like it's always just hanging on this part of the room.
Yeah.
So you know it's there.
It's
and
like
you
a
know,
ghost.
exactly.
Like a
It's like a
haunting.
ghost. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was 10 years,
Mm.
and it took, I mean, I sang at choirs and I sang for backup singing for bands, and I think, can't remember if I quit it altogether, but for my own stuff, that's too, that's too personal and too deep, and so I needed to take a break from that.
Yeah.
And it took me moving to Oakland and meeting with somebody I ended up dating later on to bring it back. And I watched the movie The Jerk. It's
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, and he played the ukulele. You belong
he's
to
a
me.
he's a remarkable musician himself.
Is
I can't believe that we
banjo.
have mentioned banjo twice in this show so far. That's this banjos are. I think Abby Posner was a guest on this show a while back, and we talked about banjo in that interview. But I don't think. I mean, generally banjo doesn't come up once, much less twice.
Interesting.
Okay, so go
sneaking in
on. Yeah, so
Um,
Steve Martin.
So that's a really cool song. And so this was before everybody was into the ukulele, and I was at the Hate Music store in San Francisco, and there was just like this one lone uk on the wall, and I thought I'll get it's one of those. It's an airline soprano ukulele that I think you used to order it at Montgomery Ward's, and I just kind of played that thing to death. I mean, I would play it so much that I would go to bed with the ukulele by my side.
Oh, I totally did that when I bought this guitar. Yeah, this was
Yes.
before I quit. But yeah, I used to like sleep in the bed with the guitar,
Yes, so you know how it is.
much to the chagrin of the
Your-
whoever else might have wanted to be in the bed.
That's right. Anyway, I forgot the question. What were we talking about?
Oh, sorry, meandering. So you said you left music
Oh, right,
and then you
coming
came
back to
back, and it was
music, yeah.
this movie and the ukulele that brought you
Movie-
back.
It was the movie The
Wow.
Jerk that brought me back.
Wow.
That's right. And yeah, and because I was so obsessed with it, all these songs started to come out again. And then, and then there was a community in Oakland, I think, that met once a month. It was kind of like an open mic, but it was this beautiful community, and they would gather at different houses, rotating. And so I decided to come out and start playing again. And that's how it started. And then the Freight and Salvage had an open mic when it was in an old location,
I
previous location.
I think I played that previous location. I haven't been in the new one.
It's a fencing.
yeah.
It's a fencing school now.
It's a
Old
fencing
location.
school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Sword fights, guitars, whatever.
That's right.
Same thing.
That's right.
The battle of the bands. Okay.
So I started going to open mics again, and then more at the Freight and Salvage, and that's kind of become home base. And then it just started coming, and then I still had a day job at the time, and then the guy that I was dating, we became a duo, and then we broke up 10 or 11 years ago, and I got laid off of my day job, and we were moving out of our place, and so that's when things really hit it off,
Huh.
because I had nothing else that was holding me back, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do this until I
Freedom's
can't do
just
it
another
anymore.
word for nothing left to lose.
Exactly. You got it.
Wow.
So I just kept doing it, and opportunities started coming again. And I didn't have a place for 9 years until last year. I got an apartment after 9 years of not having a home.
So you were touring. You were on the road constantly.
Not
Is that what
fully
you mean?
touring. I would house sit,
Oh.
and that's how it happened. Was I started booking tours, and my demographic are usually mostly retired folks, and so they love to travel, and so that's how it all started. I'm going away. Can you house sit? And then people started spreading the word, and then I would just schedule things, and if I didn't have anything, I would either visit family or I have my Marriott credit card which gives you a free night every year. 1 to 2 free nights or something like that. So it was a juggle. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
booking calendar, I have a lodging calendar, I have my regular calendar. And it was actually, by the time last year happened, I was starting to get tired. My old car retired, and the timing, like I said, something, the signs align always. My father passed away. I inherited his car, but the car was not, doesn't fit my body, so my back started hurting. And anyway, so yeah, so I have a place again, and this is not my place. I am dog sitting right now, but I've become a homebody. I love my home. There's
Yeah.
something to being able to hang your favorite pieces of art on the wall, your kitchen stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something beautiful. I'm so appreciative of the word home. The concept of
Hmm.
home. So yeah, since May, I've had a place, which I'm
Wow.
very grateful for, in Oakland.
Wow. Yeah, home is one of those tricky words for me, along with faith. Um, there are some words that I think are just going to be words I grapple with for my whole life.
Your
Um,
share. What is it about home for you?
for home, because I moved around a lot as a kid, and I just I never I don't really have a clear sense of where I'm from or what home is. I was born in Florida in one place, moved to another place in Florida, moved to New York, New Jersey, back to Florida, to Boston, all the places. Um, so when people ask me where I'm from, my first answer usually is the East Coast. It's easy when I'm out here on the West Coast because,
Sure.
we're in the East Coast. Oh, up and down. Okay, cool. So for some people, that's the end of the conversation. That's cool. And then usually I'll ask them where they're from because often if they're from the East Coast, I've lived where they're from. So it's just that sort of like where is home, but for other people they define home based on where their family lives. But my family has moved around a lot as well, so there's just this like, I wonder for myself. This might just be like along the lines of what I was thinking about music with freedom. Maybe music itself is home for me. Books are
Hmm.
home for me. Certainly they have been in any place where I've lived.
Right.
You know,
Your
I
constant companion.
yeah, I build my life around them and they sort of are the foundation of my life. So maybe in that way, those are, I don't know. See, it's
How do
like
you
this,
feel around airports? Speaking of home, how do you?
um, I think I feel stress. Why? How do you feel about
Well,
airports?
I love being. I could just hang out in an airport and
Oh,
watch people arrive and go. There's something about the emotion of arrival and departure that kind of
wow.
I feel at home with, and I asked that because I like moving around too. So I wondered if you felt the same way, and also something that I discovered later on in life was the term third culture kid. Do you know about that
I don't think
category?
so.
So it's a culture where not one place feels like home because you grew up traveling so much and you lived in
Yeah.
different places.
Yeah.
So home, and there's many definitions. One definition is if you grew up in one place, one country, and then you moved to another country, so you have both cultures
Yeah.
as part of you, but you don't relate fully to one culture or
Yeah.
another, so that's the
Yeah.
third culture.
Yeah.
But one common thing so I found this group on Facebook called the Third Culture Kids. So they're always sharing their
Oh.
thoughts and experiences, and this one common thing is the sense of home.
Mm.
And for a lot of them, the sense of home is just traveling all the time, or just hanging out in an airport, which I totally relate to. And
Wow.
but the fact that I was able to find this category felt like home to me because
That's interesting.
I grew up feeling like nobody gets it, nobody understands, because
Yeah.
I'm not in this foot or another in there. So this middle ground feels home to me,
Yeah.
and to find this community of folks who feel like they're in that same category
Yeah.
is so validating and
That's
so
so
comforting.
interesting. Because I was born in the South but raised by New Yorkers, and then we moved up north. but I didn't feel when I moved up north, like I felt like a southerner when I moved up north, but I felt like a northerner when I moved back south. And I find myself most at home in a lot of ways here in Los Angeles, where a lot of people are from elsewhere. There's just this real, everybody comes to, not everybody, but a lot of people come to Los Angeles for creative pursuits of some sort, some kind of artistry. And so this city is full of imaginative people from who knows where, but who were brought here. There's a gravity that drew them here,
Yes.
and that's the arts of some sort, trying to make a living as a, whether it's movie making, acting, music, whatever. Um, but I've always felt more like I like what you're saying about the third culture, because I've always felt more like, when you go to like a froyo, like frozen yogurt, and you get a blend of chocolate and vanilla, and it's neither fully chocolate, satisfyingly chocolate tasting, nor is it really good vanilla. It's more just like watered down both, but there's some satisfaction that you have somehow gamed the system and gotten both, but really you've gotten kind of like a cheap version of both. I feel like that's how I have felt. Like, like my earliest meals in life are southern. It's like catfish and cornbread and red velvet cake, and also,
Yum.
yeah, and also like matzo ball soup, and like all the Jewish food. I feel like a lot of times maybe it's like the food is sort of how we most I don't know how we most associate, but it feels like that
Yes.
watered down chocolate vanilla kind of
I love
swirl
that.
in a cheap cone.
I love that. And I love tapas too. That's why I love tapas. I like a little bit of
Oh,
everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, because sometimes just a taste is enough, but I like that. I like that idea. Okay, so I have to ask you, somehow we've managed to kind of talk a little bit about books, but Tomes and Tunes is the name of the show, so I have to ask you what you are reading. So, what are you reading?
So I just started this book called Lola's House: Filipino Women Living with War. My cousins encouraged me to join this book club that they were going to join called the Filipina Authors Book Club, which is amazing. And it just started earlier this year. And so this book is very intense. It's by M. Evelina Galang, and it's about these women that were in World War II that were abducted by the Japanese to be used as comfort women. So it's very intense, and I just want to note, kind of a side note, that this book club has really uh, was therapeutic for me,
Mm.
because it's all women, amazing women in this Zoom room who share the same experiences culturally and
Mm.
also as women. So there's been a lot of healing as far as, um, sharing our experiences growing up and in general. So anyway, so this book, I just started reading it, is about these women who survived the war, and
Hmm.
this author went there to get their stories, and also to help them heal. And she participated in them, protesting. They would protest in front of the Japanese embassy, and what they wanted is they want an apology. They want some kind of compensation for their suffering, and to have their history be put in the books so that
Mm.
people
Hmm.
know about their experience. And so it hasn't happened yet, but this book was released in 2017, and so I think there's a community house in the Philippines, in Manila, of these women that I don't think they live there, but they go there to just be in community, and
Mm.
be there for support for each other. So um, that's all as far as I know, as far as from what I've read. Um, so
I wonder what an impact it would have, world over, if the stories of war in the history books were told instead of almost, or if not completely, solely from the male story, but if they were told, if there was that side by side book, um, given equal weight and equal airtime for the stories about war, the women's stories about war,
oh
because
yeah,
that's women are, um, property, right?
Yes.
when it comes to war and so many other things, but sometimes in love and war are
Yes.
property.
Well, part of the book that I can share with you is she hired a translator to try to translate, because she's Filipino American and she's not, perfect in her understanding and speaking Tagalog. She hired a translator, but he was male and he could not translate the emotion
Oh.
of what this woman experienced. And so anyway, I can read it for this portion of the.
Yeah, please do.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
let me just. So this is part of a book club, and I had to download it because it wasn't going to make it in time for the meeting. Is this Saturday, which I don't think I'll be able to make it. But so here is a passage from the book. When I realized the translator could not transpose the emotional content of the conversation, I let him go. I relied on Lola's voice. Lola means grandma. Her facial expressions, her body language. I took my cues from the way she reacted to me and my questions. The Lolas and I began developing our own mix of Tagalog, our language, and English. At the end of a 16-hour day sitting in the stalled heat of Manila traffic, my driver, Faustino Bong Gardino, also engrossed in Lola's stories, would unpack the day's events with me. And then I'm going to skip a few parts. And then it goes back to, let's see, the text that follows. So she interviewed 17 women who survived, and she shares their stories. The text that follows is in English, but it is seasoned with words handed down to me by the Lolas. Some cannot be translated. What I can convey is the emotional charge they carry. Tagalog words and phrases are set in context, and you can derive their meaning by the way the Lola, the organizer, and I interact, for these are the ways I also came to understand the Lola's plight. Often words will come clear to readers later in the text. Mostly, the experience of recording these testimonies was visceral. My Tagalog eventually straightened itself out, and their English found meaning. But in the beginning, we spoke with our hands. The cuentos of the Lolas, cuentos means stories, were written on the spines of their backs. Often, they guided my fingers to their wounds. I read them slowly, tentatively, my touch light and respectful. Unlike broken sentences of English and Tagalog and Waray, which is another language, the scars needed no translation. I set my hand at the base of an old woman's spine, or in the hollow between her breasts, or in the meat of her calf. The tips of my fingers examined the shape of the scar, the size of a bump, its density, a cigarette burn, a bayonet wound, a crooked finger. My skin absorbed the memory, and I whispered, "Yes, Lola, I know, Lola." Together we searched for her lost voice. Was it here in her chest? Was it embedded in the thigh? Was it stuck in the throat or weighted down in the belly? We strained to hear, and we were hoping to set that calamity free, to stop it from happening again. So, very intense.
I'm so struck about that idea of that when she said the spines, the stories in the spines, and she was referencing like the spines of a book and like opening up the story the way that you would crack the spine of a book to open up the story. And I've never thought of, the spine in the body in quite that way before.
Interesting.
So these comfort women endured quite a lot of abuse and mistreatment.
Yeah, and they kept it inside all these years because it was so traumatic to them, and they were raped multiple times, and I didn't mean to be intense, but and so they kept it inside until I think it was in the 90s where someone was trying to do research on their stories. So they announced it on the radio, and this woman, the first woman who came out with her story, she heard it on the radio, but she just like, she had put it so much behind her that she was like, is that really true? And then so she just let it go. She didn't do anything. And then 2 weeks later, she heard it on the radio again, and she says, okay, I think I have to come out. And as soon as she came out, all these other women started coming out
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like the Weinstein story.
Last week my guest Ben Grace, he's from Australia, he lives in San Diego, and we were talking about mental health and how important it is for those of us, whatever our story is, our story of being broken and healing, whatever it is, when we get to a point of, you know, a point where we've healed enough, where we feel like, you know, we won't crumble by talking about it. Us being able to talk about it helps to open other people up and kind of give them a foundation upon which to stand as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so
it just
important
takes
to
one
share
person.
stories.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
I did
thank
not
you.
know. Yeah, I wasn't aware of this piece of history, but it's not surprising. It's not unusual, right?
Yes, that's right. It's happened all over the world.
Yeah. Here comes my Burbank airplane. I don't know if you can probably hear it there.
Yes, I hear it.
Oh, you would love it there. It's pretty close. It's a small airport, though. Have you ever flown into the Burbank
I
airport?
have. It's super
small.
easy.
It's so
super
easy.
though. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't get that like rush of constant departures and arrivals that maybe you would get at like
That's true.
San Jose or
That's true.
well, I'm reading Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison.
That's on my list.
Keep it on your list and get to it. I was floored by Beloved when I read that last summer or sometime in 2020 for the first time. It was one of those books that I sort of had to sternly tell myself, no, you must move on to the next book, because there are a lot of books in the world. And I do reread books at times, but there were a lot of books I wanted to read last summer. And I did not permit myself to start reading Beloved again once I finished it, but it was one of those books that I will read it, I imagine, a number of times in my life. It was amazing, remarkable, and life-changing. This is Song of Solomon, also one of her most celebrated books, and this is a little bit longer of a passage than I usually read, but I wanted to read the whole thing of it. Let's see here. Because I was so struck by what changes for the character at this point. So I'm pretty far. I'm almost at the end of the book. So this is a big change from sort of a very self-involved character, to this point. His name is Milkman. That's his nickname. And he has left home and is on a journey to discover, really he wanted to discover riches, gold, but what he has discovered is, at this point, is something about himself and his family. It was 6:30 in the morning, and the town was bustling as though it were high noon. Life and business began early in the south, so the coolest part of the day could be taken advantage of. People had already eaten, women had already washed clothes and were spreading them on bushes, and in a few days, when the school in the next town opened, children at this hour would already be walking, running over the roads and fields to class. Now they were sauntering about, doing chores, teasing cats, throwing bread to stray chickens, and some of them were playing their endless round games. Milkman could hear them singing, and wandered off toward them and the huge cedar that reared up over their heads. Again, their sweet voices reminded him of the gap in his own childhood as he leaned against the cedar to watch them. The boy in the middle of the circle, it seemed always to be a boy, spun around with his eyes closed and his arms stretched out, pointing. Round and round he went until the song ended with a shout, and he stopped, his finger pointing at a child Milkman could not see. Then they all dropped to their knees, and he was surprised to hear them begin another song at this point, one he had heard on and off all his life. That old blues song, Pilot, his aunt. That old blues song Pilot sang all the time. Oh, Sugar Man, don't leave me here. Except the children sang, Solomon, don't leave me here. Milkman smiled, remembering Pilot. Hundreds of miles away, he was homesick for her house, for the very people he had been hell-bent to leave. His mother's quiet, crooked, apologetic smile. Her hopeless helplessness in the kitchen. The best years of her life, from age 20 to 40, had been celibate, and aside from the consummation that began his own life, the rest of her life had been the same. He hadn't thought much of it when she'd told him, but now it seemed to him that such sexual deprivation would affect her, hurt her in precisely the way it would affect and hurt him. This is the first moment, by the way, in this book that he has any amount of empathy.
Wow.
So up to this point, he has only complete disdain for his mother. If it were possible for somebody to force him to live that way, to tell him, you may walk and live among women, you may even lust after them, but you will not make love for the next 20 years, how would he feel? What would he do? Would he continue as he was? And suppose he were married and his wife refused him for 15 years. His mother had been able to live through that by a long nursing of her son, him, which is where he gets his nickname, some occasional visits to a graveyard. What might she have been like had her husband loved her? And his father, an old man now who acquired things and used people to acquire more things. As the son of Mason Dead I, so Milkman's real name is Mason Dead III, his father's Mason Dead II, and this is as the son of Mason Dead I. He paid homage to his own father's life and death by loving what his father had loved, property, good solid property, the bountifulness of life. He loved these things to excess because he loved his father to excess. Owning, building, acquiring, that was his life, his future, his present, and all the history he knew. That he distorted life, bent it for the sake of gain, was a measure of his loss at his father's death. As Milkman watched the children, he began to feel uncomfortable. Hating his parents, his sisters, seemed silly now. And the skim of shame that he had rinsed away in the bathwater after having stolen from Pilate returned. But now it was as thick and as tight as a caul. What could he have broken into that... How could he have broken into that house, the only one he knew that achieved comfort without one article of comfort in it? No soft, worn-down chair, not a cushion or a pillow, no light switch, no running water free and clear after a turn of a tap. No napkins, no tablecloth, no fluted plates or flowered cups, no circle of blue flame burning in a stove eye. But peace was there, energy, singing, and now his own remembrances.
That kind of ties into our discussion.
I know.
A sense of home and family and wow.
And reckoning and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
She truly is a remarkable writer. She's such a, I think that, besides her facility and artfulness of language, she has an empathy that enters her writing to, I think, a remarkable degree. She always seems to be aware, like even in that parentheses, it would always seem to be a boy in the middle of the circle. She is always aware of the characters that she's portraying and then the ones outside the circle. And her characters move and change, like how this character took him 300 pages to have
to this point.
Yeah, to have an iota of empathy for anybody, and
wow.
So
yeah, maybe I'll have to bump that up my list.
Yeah, my work here is done. I love it. Aireene, will you play us a song? Yesterday was awesome. It was an awesome day. I'll just listen to your music all day long. So
thank you so much.
This is exciting to hear you sing for the show.
And I got to hear your music at SURFA, Southeastern Folk Alliance, and I love pies, and I love your song. And I saw your video that you did, the official video.
The tiny porch concert.
It's brilliant.
I just shot it. I had this vision. I shot it, and then I was like, oh, I can't get it to do what I wanted to do, but I live in Los Angeles, so 2 houses down is this filmmaker, and I was like, hey, Kevin, I'm trying to get this to... He's like, come on over. I could do it in 20 minutes. And 2 hours later, it wasn't quite 20 minutes, but 2 hours later, I came home, and I was like, that's amazing. Like,
it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
And I have to say, I've been to LA many times, and I do feel that creative juice in the air, and I so appreciate it.
Yeah,
There's so
I
many
do too.
creative people in LA. I mean, you
Yeah.
really feel it in the air.
Yeah.
So when the pandemic hit last year and everything was shut down, I started a song series called Our Song Plus Your 10 Words, where I asked the audience to give me 10 words, one word per person, and I'll write a new song. And so this was song number 2 in March, and the 10 words are luminescent, village, funny, ephemeral, lucky, rumbles, sunrise, haven, karma, and reincarnation. And
Whoa.
usually, so usually, and I've never done it before, and so it kind of I learned a lot about myself, and so I thought, I pick one word that kind of stands out, and the one word was reincarnation. So I said, okay, I'll build around that. So this is called "Will I Know You When I See Your Face," and it's about those people that we meet that we feel like we've met them before. We've all have met somebody like that. And you're like, we must have met at another lifetime. So this is kind of what that's all about.
Oh, wow.
So this is called Will I Know You When I See Your Face. There's a village in the sky where the souls await their time, while karma tally sins with all their lessons learned. Many whom I once knew, many friendships will endure. Their memories never lost, but there is one I miss the most. Will I meet you in a reincarnation? Will I be lucky to love you again? Memories are ephemeral, but the heart's long lasting. Will I know you when I see your face? Will I know you when I see your face? I stepped into the room, music played, and I started to sway. Our eyes met, and then I knew, sure as the sunrise meets the day, that haven you come home to, that funny feeling, a rumble from the heart, that something of fate's luminescence, and this time we'll never part. Will I meet you in a reincarnation? Will I be lucky to love you again? Memories are ephemeral, but the heart's long lasting. Will I know you when I see your face? Will I know you when I see your face? Will I know you when I see your face?
Oh, there we go. Yay!
Thank
Oh, what a sweet idea. Oh, man. It's like there's like heartbreak and joy embedded in it in equal measure.
But there's hope in the next reincarnation.
Yeah. will I know you when I see your face? I mean, what if I don't, you know?
That's
Um,
true.
um, Thank you for that. It's a lovely song.
Thank
Do
you.
you feel that even though I mean, you got these 10 words from others, do you feel like the song is fully yours, or are, are you too aware of those 10 words? I wasn't aware of them when I was listening. I felt like it was your song, but how did it feel from your standpoint?
I always feel like, things, I really believe things happen for a reason. So I feel like those words were meant to be thrown my way. And sometimes I get
Oh,
words that I curse, like, why did I
I
get this
know.
word? But then, you end up with this song, and, it's like, oh yeah. And even the process of writing the song, even though as challenging as it may be, it was a challenge for me. So I do feel like it's mine.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, I credit the other folks that gave me. They're the messengers that contributed to
Oh,
it too. So they're like little messengers.
wow. Wow, that's a challenge. That's very well done. It was a beautiful song.
Thank
I'm so
you.
impressed with how you were able to, from a creative standpoint, how you were able to do that. Um,
Thank you. Of course, there's not all of them are as
not all of them make their way into your repertoire. How much time do you have when you say one song, 10 words? What's the due date? How fast do you have
Oh
to
my
deliver on
gosh.
that
So at
promise?
first it was every week because I streamed every week. And I'm a procrastinator. I think a lot of creatives are procrastinators. And the whole week goes,
Well, we
there's
know how hard it is
so we procrastinate.
because we know that it's going to take over our life and everything else is going to just have to take a backseat.
Yeah, so I would do it every week, and some days I wouldn't make it. It's like, or something would happen, and I just couldn't do it, or but yeah, it was usually every week, and you procrastinate, and I usually wrote the song that morning. The show was 5 o'clock p.m. on
Okay,
Sunday,
yeah. Wow.
and I'd wake up, and it's like, why didn't I do this,
Yeah.
days before? And so I'm scrambling, and somehow I work well. I work better under pressure. So, and actually, the last song of last year is called Supernatural, and that took months. Like every week, it's like it's not ready, it's not ready. So, but yeah, generally it took me a week or really hours before the show
Yeah.
to get the song.
I do think that, the pressure, I mean, I'm thinking like I'm not a scientist. I didn't get very far. I wanted to be, and then I took a sharp turn into music and the arts. But
Different kind of
but
brain.
I'm thinking about like pressure and how you need pressure of heat, time, gravitational pressure. Like you need pressure to create something new. And so maybe that's, when we're procrastinating, there is something that happens under that pressure of 5 hours. I got
Yeah.
I had a songwriting group a couple of years ago, and every Monday we met in the evening, and I had a day job, and there were a couple of times when lunchtime on Monday I'd be in the kitchen at my company and just be like, oh my gosh, I need to write a song during my lunch hour so that I can show up and like save my face, like not show up with my tail between my legs. Like I don't have a song. Like my ego won't let me do that. If I say I'm going to have a song, I have to have a song. But sometimes it was like Monday at lunchtime is, and I can't say that they were really polished and completely done by the time I showed up. But I can think of at least one of my songs that ended up on my last record that I wrote during that lunch hour and then brought into the group.
Oh, way to go. Yeah, sometimes
So
it's that, you're right, it's absolutely that
yeah,
pressure.
yeah. So I'm half tempted to play that pie song that you mentioned.
Okay.
But instead, I think I'm gonna go with take my glasses off. I can't sing with my glasses on.
Me neither.
I think I'm gonna go with this other song though. This is one of the towns that I lived in Florida when I moved back the summer before 12th grade. I moved to a town I had never lived in before on the east coast of Florida called Stuart, and I didn't even live in Stuart. I lived in the small town next to Stuart, but the St. Lucie River flows through Stuart, and that's where the kind of cutesy downtown is. That's where the high school is in Stuart, and there's a river dock downtown, very picturesque, and it goes right up to the St. Lucie River. And this is one of those places where you would bring your prom date, you know, and corsages and boutonnieres and all the cameras flashing. And then later you would go down there, young love, hand in hand with your sweetheart. And then perhaps, you know, young parents with their strollers, or as they grow older, you know, their gaggle of kids, or, you know, as they're older, the grandparents coming down with the, you know, to spend time with the grandkids. And it's just one of those places, the river dock in Stuart, you know, was just this place. I remember sitting on that dock and feeling completely heartbroken, you know, that year. And I'm not sure what got me thinking about that river dock. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about Stuart. I only lived there for a year. I couldn't leave fast enough when it was time to go to college. Oh, is that the pup that your dog's sitting?
Yes, that's Friday. Sometimes he comes to my shows.
Hi, Friday. So I don't know what led me to thinking about the river dock at sunset, but I was thinking about time, I guess, and somehow was thinking about that river dock, imagining it sunset with the prom dates and the, you know, all the people that would go down there. And to speak to what you were saying about words and those 10 words, as I was writing this song, I wanted to put, to talk about time, I wanted to use the juxtaposition between rubber-soled shoes and high heels. And so those both ended up in the song. So this is River Dock at Sunset. Oh, hold on one second. Sorry. Let's see here. Do-do-do. Okay. On the river dock at sunset, beneath a crayon box of sky, last moments being supervised, cameras pinned us down like butterflies. We clipped flowers onto dresses, coupled off against the chill, cusp of honeysuckle summer evening, and every word we spoke full of meaning. On the river dock at sunset, the ones who taught us how to stand, reminiscing over rubber-soled shoes, wondering how we got to heels and hairdos. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. On the river dock at sunset, through the lens of passing years, half between leaving and lingering, we try to learn how to love without worrying. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. On the river dock at sunset, along the worn and weathered boards, Nothing's meant to stay, but still, letting go is the hardest drill. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. Moments like the waves of the watershed, on the river dock at sunset, on the river dock at sunset.
Nice. Beautiful.
You know, a song becomes something else, right? In the whole process. And I remembered as I was singing that song that the seed of it was a tweet from the
Really?
author Alexander Chi. He visited a fortune teller or something like that, and the fortune teller, I forget the exact tweet, I forget what it was, but it led me to the line of that line that there's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. There was something in the Twitter feed that brought up that line, not exactly in that way, but yeah.
Interesting. I love it.
I had forgotten about that until now. So
I love finding the sources of each. Like you said, it could be random, something random, or something you
know.
come across and it turns into something else.
The creative
that
process
brought-
is so weird.
It is, but that brought up a lot of emotion, I think in general for people, because it's kind of like a launching pad of time, and we've all been there before. Where It's a
Yeah.
beautiful song.
Thank you. Oh man, Irene, this has been such an awesome conversation. It's so fun to talk with you.
Oh, this has been so fun. Thank you for asking the fun questions and digging in. You know how to dig, so I appreciate that.
My grandfather used to, I was just all full of questions when I was a kid, and he would say to me, "Can we have a few minutes of silent meditation?" And it would just shut me up because I couldn't figure out what that meant. I was like, "What? I don't know." And that would get me
That's
quiet.
hilarious.
Like if I tried to ask that question, I understood that what he was saying was that I shouldn't ask the question.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been
thank you
really,
for being
it's
here.
been a pleasure.
Yeah, and I look forward to continuing the conversation when it happens next. So
Yes.
yeah,
Likewise.
you stay right there. Oh, before I let you go, do you have any shows or anything that you want to announce that you want people to know about?
Well, I'm going to be in the Central Coast next Saturday in Paso Robles at Sculptera Winery. Steve Key's songwriters at Play Series. And I do my Tuesday night shows, Tuesdays at 8 o'clock, streaming on Facebook and YouTube. I'm not really actively booking shows, but I play when I'm asked. I'm not quite ready to go out there full force yet.
Yeah,
So not much, mostly streaming at this point.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna be at Sculptera in a few weeks after you. So have you played there before?
Yes, I've played there many times before, and there's this delicious white wine. I forget the name of it. I'll send it to you later on.
Yeah.
But it's a great vibe. Have you played there before?
I haven't. No, I have never been up to the Central Coast.
It's a
I
great
mean,
vibe.
as a performer.
It's beautiful. The premises are beautiful sculptures and always good energy.
Awesome.
So you'll have a good time.
Good. Well, you will too then, I guess. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yes,
That's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, and everybody. I hope that you will. Let me turn my camera again. There we go. Please find Irene everywhere. Go to her socials and like her pages on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube. Stream her music. It is fantastic. I was listening to her music all day yesterday. It just made me feel, I don't know, it made it a really good day just to listen to her music. She's phenomenal. So And what else can I say? Oh, and watch her on Tuesday as well. If you're here in Los Angeles, or even if you are not, I am playing a show on August 7th, Saturday, a week from this Saturday, at 7 p.m. at the Los Angeles legendary venue Hotel Cafe. I'll be on the main stage. I'll be playing mostly as a duo that night with an upright bass player. Very excited. I've never performed in this way before, but hey, COVID times has created some interesting things. So I'm going to be doing that, and I'll have Abby Posner, who was a guest on the show a few weeks ago. She'll sit in on a tune or two playing mandolin, and then her band takes the stage later on that night. And there are two different kinds of tickets. There are tickets for in venue, and then there are also tickets if you want to live stream it. So I'm very excited about this hybrid opportunity. I hope that you will join me. We're all of us performers. We're just getting our sea legs working again, and just feeling it out. It is exciting and beautiful and anxiety ridden at times, and just very human. It's really beautiful the way that the venues and the artists are working together. There's a level of transparency in the indie music world, I think, right now, that is, just lovely. Like, we all understand that, COVID's kicked everybody's butts in a lot of ways. There's been a lot of loss this year, both human loss and small business loss, and the creative arts. So we're all trying to work together, and I hope to see you at a show at that one, either live stream or in person. And if you are in Los Angeles today, of course, I am a yoga teacher as well. I co-own Bhavana Flow Yoga, an mostly online yoga studio with my sweetheart, and we are teaching in person at the Gary Marshall Theater today at 6 p.m. in Toluca Lake. So if you're around, come do some yoga with us at the Gary Marshall Theater. It's outdoors. Bring your mat. They have blankets to put underneath to help pad your knees on the concrete. And I don't know what else to tell you except that next week, my guest, I'm going to hold off on telling you who my guest is next week because she took a spill off of a horse, and we might have a quick switcheroo out, depending on how she's feeling. We were emailing the other day. She's like, can we touch base on Monday? Absolutely. Get thrown from a horse, you get all kinds of treatment, all kinds of love. So anyway, I hope to see you here next week, same time. And until then, take care, be safe, and yeah, just be happy.